What's up, guys? It's three-time NFL Pro Bowler, all-decade return specialist, Josh Cribbs. I want to welcome you to the College Sports Connection podcast, where Double A, Alex, and AJ host the Mid-American Conference Best.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the CSC podcast where it's all MACTION all the time. I'm your host, Alex the Captain. Joining me as always, it's AJ the Guru.
What's going on, everybody?
AJ, welcome back. Week 2 of midweek MACTION has come and gone. Plenty of great games happened last week. We still have a 4-team race in the MAC East. However, we did have a decision made in the MAC West where the Toledo Rockets will repeat as MAC West champions and go back to Detroit for the first time since 2022. Not that long ago.
Not that long ago. Yeah, they obviously we can start with that game right now since we're talking about it. Yeah, they beat Eastern Michigan 49-23 to move the record to 9-1. Eastern falls back to 4-6 on the year. And that was one of those games too. You've talked about it. We've talked about it in our hot takes earlier in the year that EMU was going to take a step back. You took some heat for it. We've talked about it as you wear an EMU shirt right now for our listeners. So, but they have taken a step back, but Toledo is that good. And, they've moved up to 28th in the AP poll today, I believe is what I saw.
Yeah, the Rockets are receiving 55 points in the AP poll, good for 28th in the country. A little bit surprised they didn't actually crack in and sit there at 25. I think part of the midweek slate does kind of put those teams out of people's minds a little bit, out of the minds of the voters as they look to see who's where, who's ranked, and who's not. But yeah, the Rockets slot in at number 28 in the country. Miami slots in at 34. They received 1 point in the AP poll this week. So a couple MAC teams climbing up the rankings. But yeah, I mean, you talk about that Eastern game. And I was there on Wednesday night or on Tuesday night. No, it was Wednesday. Forgive me. On Wednesday night. Yeah. And I mean, very interesting game. There were 11 pro scouts in the box. Most of them obviously eyeballing Quinyon Mitchell, who is right now kind of projected as a late first-round draft pick, which would be the highest draft pick Toledo's had since I want to say 1992. I'd have to double check that, but it'd be
surprising too.
It would be quite a while since they've had a first-round draft pick. Of course, the number one overall pick back in the 2013 draft came out of Central Michigan.
Yeah, Eric Fisher. Yeah, 13-14. Yeah.
So that no MAC team can take that as the slot of the first team in the MAC to send somebody first overall. But looking at that game, I was sitting next to Kyle Rowland from the Toledo Blade, and we got to talking through that game. And at one point, Toledo was scoring a touchdown every 4.5 minutes in the first half. I tweeted out, and he actually in turn used it in his article, how Toledo was rivaling that of the Fielding Yost point a minute teams back at the turn of the century, back in the early 1900s from University of Michigan. And Toledo took a 35-3 lead into the half. They were moving the ball pretty good through that whole half. DeQuan Finn, 407 passing yards after just 3 quarters of work. I take that back, about 3.5 quarters of work. They did keep starters in a little bit longer, but it does set up for a pretty epic battle down in Bowling Green this next week. Bowling Green, they moved to bowl eligibility. They are now sitting at 4-2 and still alive in the MAC East race. It's going to be pretty interesting to see how that game goes down, and we'll talk about that one here in a minute. But I will say this is the first time Toledo has played a complete game all season, and I think that's the difference. kind of watching what they did, that whole first half, they just foot on the gas, foot on the gas, foot on the gas. Second half, they did the same thing, but it was different because they just kind of said, we're going to put the foot on the gas, but we're also going to make adjustments for ourselves to get even better in this half. And then, of course, when you pull the starters in the fourth quarter, any touchdowns later, kind of, I don't want to say discredited because they still happen, but you kind of look at with a grain of salt.
Sure. Yeah, you kind of look at it statistically here for Toledo. You talked about their complete game, and DeQuan Finn was fantastic as always, 23 of 37 for 407. 3 touchdowns, 1 interception with a QBR of 99.5. Rushing attack wise, only had 101 yards on the ground. Penny Boone led all rushing with 11 carries, 52 yards, but he also led receiving with 4 receptions, 116 yards. Newton was right behind him with 108 yards. So yeah, you talk about the complete game. Overall, this was I would say Toledo's best performance going into a very important game this week against BG, being the Battle of I-75.
Sure, and I'm excited to see what these teams do, what kind of happens here. It's going to be an interesting week next week, but let's move on to some of the other games. Just kind of a quick recap. Well, let's we can kind of actually move into our plays of the week, our upcoming games of the week, our helmet stickers. Yeah. We've talked about obviously that Toledo game. Talk about who was your helmet sticker of the week, who had the best overall performance. Could be Toledo, of course. It could be, any of these other teams. What are you looking at?
Yeah, I'm going back to that Tuesday slate, that Western versus Central game. That was a very competitive back and forth game the entire way. Mm-hmm. And, you kind of look at statistically here, Hayden Wolf, he gets my helmet sticker for the week. He was 25 of 36 for 333 with 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. But it's great to see. And I saw Western earlier a couple of weeks ago, and, I talked about Western becoming, a kind of a surprise team in the MAC this year, and they've turned on here as of late. They're starting to play really good ball. They finally found a quarterback. Because early on in the year, they were playing 2 or 3 different quarterbacks in one game. And I finally settled on Hayden Wolf. He's performed extremely well. And it's great, too, when he has weapons around him, like Jalen Buckley. He had 23 rushes for 117, 2 touchdowns. Kenneth Womack had 12 receptions for 135. His longest was 25 yards. And then Salam also, 39 yards on the ground. But yeah, I'm going with Hayden Wolf because I really like where Western is going. I'm really, as more and more I watch him, I really like Coach Taylor and what he's brought to Western. He's brought a new energy and a new focus to that program. I talked to a friend of the show a while back, Mike Kirshner, my former high school coach who played at Western. I asked him quickly about it. He goes, it reminds him a lot of the PJ Fleck era, the excitement and the energy of a young coach. Mm-hmm. And that's what he brought. He was the first person he brought up was PJ Fleck, saying it really reminds me of when he was there. And the more and more I watch, the more and more I can see that.
Sure. No, I mean, Hayden Wolf, obviously, definitely deserving this week of the helmet sticker. I mean, you look at what he's done in his career, over at Old Dominion, he had a great career over there for the Monarchs. And yeah, I mean, getting to transfer in, and he is officially only a junior. He's played, this is his 4th season, but per the COVID year and everything, he's officially only a junior. So he's going to get another year with Lance Taylor and this system. So, it really exciting to see what he does on the season. He already has over 1,200 yards and has really later in this year, kind of taken control of that. For me, I'm moving over to Bowling Green, Kent State. A fantastic game. That I went back and I watched this week because I didn't get a chance to really watch it earlier, but I did watch it this weekend. And, people talk about Connor Bazelak looking really good. Tommy Ulatowski, the quarterback for Kent State, actually had a pretty solid game. But Teron Keith, their kind of their lead running back, he looked excellent. He had on the night 17 touches, nine carries, 8 receptions, for 233 total yards and 2 scores.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited because this is we're going to see next week. And again, I keep referencing this Bowling Green Toledo game, but we're going to see next week a battle of, really, in my mind, 2 of the best running backs in the conference. Teron Keith is one of those running backs who can kind of do it all. He can run, he can catch, He can get, he can get open, he can get downfield. This was his kind of, for this season, I think this was his coming out game. This was his, kind of break things open, show people like, hey, I'm still here. Because, you look at his other games that he's had this year, he's had a couple carries here and there. 9 carries has been the most he's had on the season. 8 receptions has been the most he's had on the season. This was the game that they needed him. Now they do have Terrion Stewart, the other power running back. So I think Teron Keith and Terrion Stewart really anchor that backfield. So I'm really excited to see what they do, and what they do against Toledo next week. You get these two going, they're going to be really, really hard to stop. But that's who gets my helmet sticker.
Sure.
I was very impressed with him. This was, again, his breakout game for the week. Super impressive. Hats off to him for a phenomenal week. Play of the week. What play stuck out to you?
Play of the week for me. I'm going to be a homer. That's Jackson Corbell's game-winning field goal against Northern Illinois for Ball State. But yeah, it was great to keep the bronze stock back in Muncie. One of the most prestigious awards, trophies, rivalries in all of the country. Phenomenal trophy. I showed my wife that, and she goes, "That's very Midwestern." I go, "It absolutely is, but we love it." But no, that was a great game too. I mean, Ball State, struggled on and off, but they were able to get, down the field. Kyle Kelly was able to move the ball down the field late, and Jackson was able to hit the 36-yard field goal to win it and keep the trophy in Muncie.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big moment for them. Ball State's won 4 out of the last 5 in the Battle of the Bronze Stalk. Rumors swirling that it may have cost Thomas Hammock his job. That remains to be seen, of course. That's yeah, I mean, it's always tough to lose to your rival, especially in a heartbreaking fashion. What that didn't Northern Illinois, wasn't it John Houston 2 years ago, where he booted the field goal and was doing like the windmill over to the sideline and was like jumping up and down and like arms waving around looking for the trophy.
He went right over there and got the trophy. I think you were in Fort Wayne with me. We were at a movie or something like that, and we were watching that game on our phones, I think.
That sounds right.
You and I were doing something together and watching that on our phones at a movie theater.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I couldn't believe it. But yeah, obviously great for Ball State. I've been to that game before at DeKalb in that's going on 10 years ago now. Yeah, 2013. With Rod Carey was the coach at NIU, and that was a lot of fun. It's a great game to see, and it was cold. It was typical MACTION. It was that environment that you want on a Tuesday night. And it's a great win for Muncie, great win for Ball State, great win for Coach New as well, who's been struggling looking for a win this year. I think we found a quarterback in Kyle Kelly. The more and more he's played, the more and more comfortable he's been. He's only had 115 yards and 1 touchdown, but I mean, Marquez Cooper was able to bail him out a lot as well, just under 100 yards on the ground. But back to my play of the week, I'm going field goal.
Yeah, the field goal, great kick, great win there for Ball State. For me, I'm flipping over to Say Bangura for Ohio. Really, I could pick either one of his touchdowns, and they weren't anything crazy. They weren't anything special. They were a 2-yard run and a 1-yard run. But the 1-yard run is the one I want to talk about because this capped a long drive for Ohio. Took about 5 minutes off the clock, 8 plays, 29 yards. And this was in the fourth quarter when you need to milk the clock, right? They were only up 13-10 at the time. They were tied 10-10 with about 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter. But Ohio goes down, punches it in for 1. And Say Bangura, with a really great line, this is a guy who can play good football. But I think for me, he gets the performance for, the just punching it in right when your team needed you to. He didn't have, a lot of yards, but he stepped up when it mattered. And so, I've got a hats off to him. That's going to be my pick for this week, that the game winning touchdown to lock this thing up with under 2 minutes to go over in Buffalo. Yeah.
I mean, Caesar's been a guy who's been quietly performing really well this year. He has 134 carries for 564, 6 touchdowns, averaging 4.2 yards. Doesn't get a lot of talk in the conference because there are some really good running backs, but he's just quietly moving the ball along and keeping Ohio in contention for the East.
Yeah, so let's move on to a couple other things before we get to our games of the week. We mentioned the AP poll. Toledo comes in at 28th in the country. Miami moving back into receiving votes, picked up 1 vote this week. There's other scenarios on the table. I'm kind of looking at things. I've been looking at a lot of things this weekend. There's other scenarios on the table. Toledo, I think, genuinely has a path to a New Year's 6. And I know people on Twitter X will disagree with me and say, no, Liberty's in the way. And yes, Liberty's undefeated. They are in the way. They'll say Tulane's in the way. Yes, Tulane is in the way. But I want to draw attention to a few things. Tulane has not looked good the last couple of weeks. Air Force, big shout out to Hawaii for fully taking them out of contention. Our Army, gets that win, knocks them down a peg, but they were still being talked about for being in contention. I'm talking fully taken out of contention in a 14-point loss to Hawaii. Fresno State absolutely throttled by San Jose State 42-18. Who Toledo beat at home earlier this year, San Jose State. So I think, the Mountain West might be completely out of it. Other teams I think Toledo has to be cheering against right now. And I'm looking at this one in particular. Everybody's talking, SMU is still in it, as is Memphis. And I agree I disagree with them to a degree. Both of those teams are 8-2. Now both are 6-0 or 5-1 in AAC play. I think the committee would probably value a 2-loss AAC champion over a 1-loss Mid-American Conference champion. So right there, you gotta hope one of them loses if you're Toledo. If you're a MAC fan and you're just hoping we get a New Year's 6 bowl, let's say you're an Akron fan, kind of just hoping for the best for the MAC. This is also what you're cheering for. But I also think looking at it even further, you've got UTSA. They're taking on South Florida. UTSA, if you're a Toledo fan, if you're a MAC fan, this is who you want winning the AAC.
Yeah.
And here's why. They are 7-3. They're currently 6-0 in conference play. They are 7-3. They are on track to potentially play in the American Athletic Conference Championship. Tulane sitting up there at 9-1. UTSA, SMU, they're all 6-0 in conference play. UTSA, the rest of their schedule, so they've got USF this week, and then they're at Tulane next week. If UTSA can knock off Tulane on the road next week, then they are probably looking at taking on SMU in the conference championship or Memphis in the conference championship. Whichever one UTSA plays, you want UTSA to win. You want a 3-loss AAC champion, because I think the committee values a 2-loss AAC champion, but I don't believe that they will value a 3-loss AAC champion over Toledo. And then moving over to the Sun Belt, Liberty, they have looked great this year. They smacked Old Dominion yesterday. They smacked Old Dominion on Saturday. Full props to them. But I am not overly impressed with them because they have one of the worst, if not the worst, schedule in college football. They have a couple common opponents with Toledo. They've got Buffalo, they've got UMass, and then after this week they will have Bowling Green. They are undefeated. You can't take that away at all. But I really, really don't think, if it comes down to Liberty or Toledo, I think you got to look at quality of wins. And yes, Toledo doesn't have the quality win over Illinois that they wanted, but I also don't think that the quality win over Bowling Green is as impressive on UTSA's resume as Toledo's quality win over Miami, Ohio.
Yeah. And what's interesting too is kind of bouncing off of that is this might be one of the most important championship weekends we've seen in a long time. Yeah, based off that, because there's going to be a lot of game or a lot of New Year's Six bowls determined on championship weekend this year. In the years past, there's been most of them have been kind of figured out, or the bigger bowls have been figured out, going into the championship week. But this week, this year, it's kind of wide open. And so, if Toledo wins out, and but if they win out convincingly too, I think there is a part of the eye test that is important to a degree. How you perform, we've seen that, in the playoffs over the past couple of years for the top four in the bracket. But yeah, if they can win out convincingly, they're really going to make it hard for people to determine at the end of the season who goes where and whatnot. But like I said, this is going to be an extremely important championship week this year, more important than years past.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think it'll be a lot of fun to kind of watch it shake out. Obviously, it's we would love to see a MAC team get back to a New Year's Six or a BCS Bowl is what they used to be called. The last one to make it was Western Michigan the year that they went undefeated. They lost to Wisconsin in the Cotton
played Wisconsin
Bowl.
Tough.
Yeah, they played Wisconsin real tough. 20-12 was the final in that one.
Yeah.
And that was a really great game. I would be very happy to see a MAC team obviously get back to that. But I also think, and this can be something for another segment, but I also think that if Toledo somehow goes 12-1 and doesn't get a New Year's Six bowl, you can't just send them to the Dollar General Bowl.
No.
I think you have to send them to I think we've been tagged in a Birmingham Bowl, or I think even a Pinstripe Bowl. That how many times does ESPN fluctuate those tie-ins and who gets to go where and do what? I think you have to reward a 12-1 season with a better bowl game than just what the conference is automatically tied into. I don't know how all that works. And, I know that the powers who be, they figure it all out and they get it all put together. But I genuinely believe a 12-1 conference champion deserves a better bowl game than the Dollar General Bowl or the Cure Bowl and nothing against those bowl games. They deserve an opportunity to play on a much bigger national stage.
Yeah. 12-1 ranked Toledo, you're ranked between 22 and 25, maybe by that point, somewhere in there.
I think if they're 12-1, they probably crack the top 20 just by virtue of who has to play what, who doesn't play in a conference, because you only get 10 teams in conference championships.
True. So yeah, you look at all the other conferences around the country, there's everything's so backwards right now. So there's a lot to be played out here over the next couple of weeks. But yeah, I mean, if they can crack the top 20 and, and I'm on the bottom ticker of the screen, have Toledo at 19, that looks a lot better at a bigger bowl game than, like I said, the Dollar General Bowl or the Duke's Mayo Bowl or wherever we're at.
Sure.
I don't think
I think Toledo would take the Duke's Mayo Bowl, honestly.
Yeah, but I don't think Coach Kendall would sit under a bucket of mayo. Would he?
I don't know. We'd have to see.
Because we've talked with him many times, and I don't know if he's the Mayo guy.
Fair enough. Let's move on to this week's slate of games. We've got some good ones on tap. We'll start with the Tuesday slate. We'll start with the one that I'm going to be at. Toledo at Bowling Green, down there at Deutsch Perry Stadium, 7:00 kickoff over on ESPN2, getting that national audience spotlight, followed by Western Michigan at Northern Illinois, same time over on the U, and Akron at Eastern Michigan, also the same time over on the CBS Sports Network. I know which game I'm going to say, and this week, guys, I'm going to try to be real unbiased on my tweets towards Toledo. It's going to be tough, but I'm excited for this Toledo Bowling Green game. Both of them have a lot to play for. Toledo still outside looking at it a New Year's Six. Bowling Green still has a shot at getting to Detroit. Which game sticks out to you the most?
Yeah, for me on that Tuesday slate, I think Western and Northern Illinois. Both teams sitting there at 4-6. NIU's getting 3 points just because it's a home game. But the way that Western's been playing here as of late, they've coming off 2 straight wins against Eastern and Central. Northern Illinois kind of struggling to find their footing right now, and the way Western's rolling with Hayden Wolf, like we talked about earlier, I really think that's going to be an important game for both squads. It's a good thing for Coach Hammock, if he can win this game, but it's also a huge thing for the program if Western can pull it off and Coach Taylor's first year.
Yeah, no, I think there's a big opportunity for both these teams, both fighting for bowl eligibility, sitting there at 4-6, like you said. So it'll be really interesting to see what kind of goes down in this game. This Akron EMU one, this one's purely for pride. I know one of the EMU commenters, one of our followers, mentioned something about teams making it to a bowl game at 5-7, and right now, looking at it, of the 84 bowl slots, only 58 teams are currently eligible for bowl games.
Yeah.
So we could see some 5-7. What happens though before we get to the 5-7 is JMU and Jacksonville State both get an invite if they are eligible, and then we move to the 5-7. So it'll be interesting to see. Eastern, they are fighting to get back to a bowl game. And I mean, they're licking their wounds after that Toledo game. So they do get to host Akron. I believe it's senior night for the Eagles. So that'll be good for them up at the factory. I mean, all three of those games have the potential to be really good.
You look at the lines though on Tuesday, it's Toledo -10, NIU -3, and EMU -5.5. Nothing. You don't get to the bigger spread until you get down to the one Saturday game we have this week, but we'll get there. But yeah, that Tuesday slate, that's a real exciting one, isn't it?
Tuesday's going to be a lot of fun. Moving into that Wednesday slate, we got Central Michigan at Ohio. Ohio, they're still trying to get to Detroit, obviously hoping that Bowling Green loses, makes their path a little bit easier. They don't need Bowling Green to lose. Because they do own that type. Well, actually, they do need Bowling Green to lose. Just to prevent anything. But they do own that tiebreaker on the Falcons. So CMU at Ohio, and then Buffalo at Miami. Buffalo, they're trying to keep their conference championship hopes alive. A win over Miami gives them the head-to-head tiebreaker, and Buffalo would then actually send things into complete chaos if Bowling Green wins, if Ohio wins, and then Buffalo wins. Everything in the East is chaotic going into the final week, and that'll be a lot of fun. But then the last game of the week, we've got Kent State and Ball State, albeit this one as well, down there in Muncie. And yeah, but I mean, two great games that I'll be at this week. Just kind of a quick aside, looking forward to the opportunity. I'm actually going to get a chance to work the Toledo Bowling Green game with the ESPN production crew. Get an opportunity to kind of work a little bit behind the scenes, help out with some of that staff. So big shout out to ESPN for giving me that opportunity. Looking forward to participating on that. But then Saturday, you'll get our regularly scheduled coverage with Ball State, Kent State football. That's going to be a lot of fun. Really looking forward to getting down to Muncie. I haven't been down to Muncie since you and I went to that Toledo.
That was before we were getting credentialed and doing actual media stuff. That was a huge thank you again to Air Force Academy for having us up. We got some great pictures. So we'll post those here as we get those figured out. But yeah, that was an overall really cool time. And I really thought after that get lost, Toledo would have been at 25. And I talked about that, because that was, their Air Force was ranked 25th at the time and getting upset by a 2-1 Army. I really thought Toledo was going to bounce up there at that point.
Yeah.
But they're inching up closer and closer. So
for sure. Well, yeah, man. Well, hey, thanks guys for tuning in. We appreciate it. Check us out on all of our socials over on Twitter X at College Sport Pod. You can find us on Instagram at the CSC Podcast. You can find us over on Facebook if you're old school, facebook.com at the CSC Podcast. You can find us over on our YouTube. Please go subscribe. Going to be doing more content there soon. You can find us over there at the CSC Podcast. Got a lot of fun stuff heading your way this week with these games. Couple great games going into the last 2 weeks of the conference schedule. Going to be a lot of fun, and really looking forward to it. So just make sure you guys stay tuned. We appreciate it, and yeah, we'll see you guys next week.
See ya.